Hi, I'm April. I am a singer-songwriter and music teacher, and I don't know if a lot of you know this, but I actually got my start on YouTube. Not because of music channels per se, but because I was really interested in creative writing. So I've been following AuthorTube for like years now. They are the thing that really inspired me to get on this platform in the first place. One of my favorite channels over on AuthorTube is Ellen Brock. She is a freelance editor and she has this wonderful YouTube channel where she talks about writing techniques and gives awesome writing tips. A little while ago, she released a video called The 4 Types of Novel Writers. And in that video, she lays out this really amazing kind of scheme for figuring out what kind of writer you are. And I was really interested in this specifically because I figured out through this video that my writing style is actually different from what I thought it was. Something else that I loved about Ellen's video is that she didn't just talk about what kind of writer you are, she also laid out what kinds of techniques you should be using based on what kind of writer you are. So I'm gonna try to take all of that wonderful information and translate it over to the music world because I think it does really translate. And I do think it's amazing information. So make sure you go check out Ellen's channel. I will link it in the description below. And let's get started. The first set of parameters is whether you are a plotter or a pantser. So for those of you who are uninitiated, a plotter is someone who plots out an entire story bit by bit in an outline and then goes on and writes their novel from there. A pantser, on the other hand, is someone who flies by the seat of their pants and just writes everything in one go and then has to edit a lot of stuff later. Most people, when they get started with like any kind of writing, tend to start with pantsing. And honestly, I don't think a lot of people even think to outline a song because it seems like just such a creativity-less thing to do. But actually, it couldn't be further from the truth because I think plotting is a wonderful way to get started with a song. So right now, whether you're a plotter or a pantser, you might actually find that another route might suit you better. So in order to tell whether you are a plotter or a pantser, here are a couple of criteria that you can maybe use. Remember that there's no right and wrong here. There's no like, this is the better way to write and this is a terrible way to write. We're all writers and we will all come up with amazing products regardless. So on to our list. What makes you a plotter versus a pantser? If you feel like you have to be inspired to write, or if you feel like you have trouble coming up with good ideas, or if you tend to write like half a song and think, wow, this is really amazing, I'm doing such a good job, and then just not really know where to go, chances are you should be plotting your song. As always, I will put a link in the description to my outlining guide. Hopefully that'll be really helpful if you are brand new to outlining or if you want to try something new. So if none of those above things really fit with you, you might be a pantser. Do you ever finish writing an entire outline and then think, yeah, I don't really want to write the song anymore? Or you get a writing prompt and the thing you wind up writing tends to be like super different from whatever it is that you started writing about? Or do you come up with a million little tiny ideas and just write notes in your phone and on your notebook and everywhere you can possibly write little notes, but like you never go back to them because if you don't write a song in that instance in its completion, it'll never get written? You, my dear, might be a pantser. Again, there's nothing wrong with either of these types of writer. I find that I tried for a very long time to be a plotter, but in actuality, I find that I'm more of a pantser when I go about writing. It's also worth mentioning that you might be a mix of the two. Or you might find that it's really fun to mix and match. Write one song with an outline, write the next by the seat of your pants. Writing in a bunch of different ways can be really helpful to you as a songwriter. The next little binary that we have here is theoretical versus intuitive. Theoretical songwriters tend to be people who are very analytical when they write songs. They use a lot of music theory. They're constantly thinking about why they're making the decisions that they're making. Intuitive writers, on the other hand, just go for it. Every decision they're making is happening in the moment. I am a totally theoretical songwriter. You can see evidence of that right here. Now this is really different from plotting versus pantsing because with plotting and pantsing, it's about how much work you're doing ahead of time, Whereas with intuitive versus theoretical, it's how much the ideas that you're writing are connecting to a specific theme. So think of it as like a when versus a why. So, are you a theoretical writer or are you more of an intuitive writer? Here's how you know. If you're a theoretical writer, but you don't necessarily know that yet, chances are you write lots of chord progressions that feel like they are stale or boring. Like you've written the same 4 campfire chords over and over and over, and nothing seems to work. It feels like everything's a little bit boring to you, even if it's not necessarily boring to everyone else. You might also find that your lyrics feel a little generic or a little phoned in, or you might find that all of your songs just sound the same. If, on the other hand, you are an intuitive writer, you'll probably find that you don't like the restriction of specific song forms. You get really bored when you try to stick to one key or one genre. You often need to add an extra bar or use accidentals or change the tempo in the middle of the song. Essentially, you have trouble sticking to the script. So from here, you might find that you super duper align to a couple of these categories, or you might find that you kind of are a mix of a whole bunch of different things, and that's also totally normal. But right now what I'm going to do is take these 4 categories: intuitive plotter, intuitive pantser, theoretical plotter, and theoretical pantser, and I'm going to give you some great ways to use your preferred method to your fullest potential. If you are an intuitive plotter, you might find that you don't need or use a lot of music theory, and that's okay. I think a lot of what comes from being intuitive is this idea that you don't necessarily need to be following all of the rules. Now, obviously, I will never say don't learn music theory because it is so useful and so helpful even if you are a really intuitive person. And using music theory is a really great way to just have tools in your tool belt to be able to just pull out and use whenever. If you're an intuitive plotter, you should be coming up with a plan ahead of time, but don't feel like you have to stick to it in the moment necessarily. You might find that there are little tweaks that you want to make, or that you make a really sparse outline and then just write everything as it comes to you. You should also definitely take advantage of writing prompts. They are so insanely helpful, especially for people who want to plan stuff out ahead of time, but also want a little bit of freedom from form. If you're an intuitive pantser, you're the type of person who just needs to sit down and go. Like you just need to start writing. Instead of coming up with a specific writing prompt, it might be really helpful to come up with just an image in your mind. And within that mental image, you'll probably have lots of emotional responses. If you're a songwriter and the type of person who can just sit down and write something, you're probably a very emotional or very empathetic person. So let yourself lead with emotion. Play what sounds good to you, play what makes your emotions stir. You probably won't need a ton of music theory, but music theory is again really great, so do not neglect it, please. If you happen to be an intuitive pantser, you are probably going to have a lot of editing work to do after the fact, and that's okay. Editing is part of the writing process, it's important, and it's going to make your songs the best that they can be. So don't be afraid to finish your song, take a day away from it, and come back, because that's when you're going to get all of that beautiful editing work done. If you are a theoretical plotter, oh buddy, you are an outliner. Planning things out is going to be the best thing for you. Organization is everything. I can't even begin to tell you how great outlines are if you are the type of person who gets stuck for ideas. A lot of people are really skeptical about this method because it feels like it might drain you of creativity, but I think you're going to find the opposite. If you plan things out ahead of time and stay organized, you're going to find that the ideas flow more naturally and more easily. If you have a plan for where you're going with your song, you're going to avoid those nasty spots where you have no idea what to write next. And instead, you'll have a solid plan that you can then work from. The other thing to address here is that you don't have to be a music theory wizard. You don't have to know everything about writing craft. But you might find that implementing one tiny theory concept is going to just open up worlds for you. You'll learn about sus chords and then suddenly write an entire song based on the idea that sus chords are really cool. Or you might learn about first person versus second person and try to write a song in each. The nice thing about this kind of writing style is that everything in the world is inspiration for you. You can write about literally anything. You don't have to be in a specific mindset to write a song. You don't have to feel like you are inspired. Instead, you can just sit down and the ideas will flow, because if you've planned it out ahead of time, the song will write itself. If you are a theoretical pantser, welcome to the club. I am too. And what's funny, and one of the things that I kind of realized when I saw Ellen's video, is that I thought for a very long time that I was a plotter. So if you're like me, you write by the seat of your pants, you just sit down and go, but you implement a lot of music theory and you really like incorporating different ideas that you've just learned about. Every single thing that you write is super meticulous, but it's happening on the fly. So what you can do to make your songwriting the best it can be is that you should use music theory concepts, even if it's just little tiny things, but try to use it on the fly. You're the type of person for whom prosody is the biggest deal, because when you write that song using those happy sounding chords, it is going to be so important for you to try to think about why those lyrics match. So don't do too much pre-planning, learn while you write. And feel free to edit on the fly. I don't say edit on the fly to a lot of people, but I think for this specific type of writing, it's really helpful just to kind of cross out your mistake and go for something new. I think for writers like us, it's not going to specifically affect the way that your brain works. You're just gonna kind of move past it and keep writing. Whereas I think a lot of writers would get stuck on the editing process. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a like, and let me know in the comments what type of writer you are. I'd also love to know what type of writer maybe you thought you were, or any tricks that you're going to implement now that you are fully aware of how you need to be writing. You are also most welcome to subscribe if you have not already, and ring the little bell to be notified the next time I post.